So first, I want to thank Rex and Diana for their support in helping me to finish and to complete this paper. So the paper is about what we've been doing in Latin American cities on congestion. I'm going to focus especially in Bogota, but I'm going also, I will give some information about mainly Latin American capital cities, big cities that have been growing very fast in the last decade. I'm going to talk a little about projects and initiatives related to demand management, especially in Santiago, Mexico City, and Bogota. So the main focus of the presentation with this analysis on congestion charge in Bogota. We've also worked with the Inter-American Development Bank in trying to propose congestion charge in cities like Mexico City and Santiago. So I'm going to talk about that, acceptability of the congestion charge, and how HOT or the kind of projects we were discussing yesterday could be applied or not in the Latin American context. By the way, I have to say that Colombia is the 37th member of OCDE. It happened this year in April. So first, of course, our cities have been growing very fast, and they are not just like cities, they are just like engulfing, eating neighborhood cities, and they are becoming really a regional territory with a very important interaction even outside city limits. And I think this is going to be a common situation for all those big cities I want to show you. So in this first table, you can see how the population has been growing in the last 18 years. So Bogota, for example, it's been growing in population from 6.2 million to 8.2 million. So roughly 25%. Buenos Aires, 20%. Lima is also having a strong growth. Mexico City, 32%. Santiago and Sao Paulo. But the other aspect that also has an impact on mobility is expansion. So as you can see, density has been decreasing in most of Latin American cities, but this is the special case of Bogota, when we are having a very strong built-up density. It's getting to 24,000 people per square kilometer. So it's Bogota is probably the densest city in the Western world. So probably some Indian, Asian cities may be more dense, but in the Western world, probably Bogota is the densest city. And so that gives a special situation and a special challenge for mobility, for transportation. And it's a bit different, for example, from Santiago. Probably Minister can tell us about that, and Mexico, which have been expanding a lot. So there is a quick review on what's happening on densities in Bogota, as it is kind of different, and it's we've been having a strong densification around mass transit. So we have a BRT network, and as you can see in this table from the paper that we wrote some ago, the density around BRT corridors is going faster up than in parts of the city that have not a BRT corridor. So the other thing that makes congestion critical in Latin American cities is the strong car ownership growth. So the last decade, Latin American cities have been growing wealthier, and that has, of course, an impact on uh, car ownership. So these are some of the figures that we can see. So for example, Santiago has been having a very big uh, increase on car ownership, Mexico too, Bogota, Lima, probably doubling the number of vehicles uh, over less than 10 years. And another interesting pattern that is common to some of Latin American cities is motorbikes. So we're having a huge increase in motorbikes, for example, in Bogota and Buenos Aires, Lima, Mexico City. Um, and this is causing probably new externalities linked to road safety and also pollution. As you may know, we have this pattern relating GDP per capita and vehicle ownership, um, motorization rate, and Latin American countries are just starting to have this steep growth when United States and European cities and countries really have just reached probably the peak of the vehicle ownership rate. So this is also interesting, trying to forecast how uh, these vehicles are going to grow in time. So this is a model we developed um, trying to forecast how vehicles are going to grow. So we have like an income level to own a car, to own a motorcycle, and that gives us the possibility to calculate car ownership and motorbike ownership. It's linked to the function of probability of the level of income. And so what we have is this kind of pattern showing a big increase in the next years on car ownership. So what is going to happen in the next decades in Bogota, for example, it's that every 10 years, we're going to double the number of vehicles in the city. That's really a critical situation. And I think it's difficult to really be able to stop that. If you look at the rankings that are now available worldwide, trying to calculate congestion, well, Latin American cities are world champions in those congestion rankings. So, for example, Bogota is now number 3 in the world, number 3 most congested city in the world. Lima, number 7. Mexico, that was legendary about congestion, is number 13 on this ranking. Santiago, number 26. So those rankings, this is TomTom. This ranking just compares the speed at early hours in the morning or late in the evening with the average speed operation of the network, and that's where they calculate the difference and this critical situation. We also have, for example, waste ranking, right? So it's related to kind of how pleasant driving is in a city, and Bogota, Mexico City, again, Lima, and in general, Latin American cities are not so friendly in terms of this good feeling on riding. And it surprises a little to see that this big congestion happens in cities when we have, I could say, a sustainable model shift. This is the shift, the model shift, the model share, sorry, from Bogota. So as you can see, car is only 14% of trips, motorcycle 6%, but for example, public transport, you have mass transit here, and buses accounts for more than 30%. And something also very interesting in Bogota is that we are having 7.5% of the trips made by bicycle. So we are having 1.2 million trips per bicycle per day. That's more than Amsterdam or Copenhagen. So what do we do? What are the kind of solutions we are providing, we are developing in our cities? First is this demand management work, trying to make car use more expensive. And it's been made especially with taxes on fuel and with parking. So for example, in Bogota, we have 25% tax on fuel that goes to public transport. We have trying to develop an off-street surcharge on parking that has been denied 3 times by City Council. And this is one of the first points I want to underline, and it's how going against car use in Latin American cities is politically very complicated. We are working on regulating fares to off-street parking, and we have an on-street parking project. In Mexico City, there is also a lot of taxes on cars, taxes that go to national budget, but also that really allows local budget to be important. And they have an on-street parking scheme since 2012. Santiago also has a strong tax on fuels that finances infrastructure and at the national level. And they have been working for a while on concessions on street parking. The other thing that is different, and I think it's original from Latin America, is this car use restriction. So this car use restriction has been put in place in Mexico City and Santiago for pollution reasons since the 20th century, since the 1980s, and it's progressively disappearing unless we have like a pollution big crisis that makes the restriction to be used again. In Mexico, all cars are the restriction. In Bogota and Colombian cities, this restriction has been developed for congestion reasons. But in Bogota, since 1999, it has been uninterrupted, and it has been growing on time. So at the beginning, it was just two plate numbers. Now in Bogota, it's half of the plate numbers have a restriction 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. Uh, this really has a negative welfare balance if you try to calculate in economic terms what the probably one of the only ways to really tackle congestion all those years. And the other key issue that happened with this car use restriction is that we had an increase of a second vehicle in households. And this second vehicle is most of the time um, an old car or a motorcycle. So as I was mentioning, probably one of the interesting things that happened in Bogota specifically has been really struggling and fighting and trying to get a congestion charge in the city. So between 2013 and probably 2019, we've been working on several congestion charge schemes. Uh, for example, in 2013, we had uh, a mission, a technical mission from Singapore. We had a work that we did at the Universidad Los Andes with UCL London to provide advice on congestion charge. And finally, we contracted an international consultant, Steve Davis, to try to put in place the congestion charge. This scheme had a very strong political decision, but the city council rejected the congestion charge 3 times between 2013 and 2019. So the congestion charge project, studies, etc., was very comprehensive. It had a very detailed transportation model, a four-step model that gave us a lot of information about vehicle kilometers, speed, etc. It was supported on a very strong OD survey made every 4 years in Bogota. We had an economic model that allowed us to calculate the optimal charge, how was the expected collected money, and we had a financial model. So we were trying to define if this should be a kind of concession or kind of outsourcing given to the private sector, or it should be ruled by the public sector. And so we had this area. It was a small area, but it was a very rich, one of the richest areas in Bogota, around 10 square kilometers. And we had like a technology of transponders and cameras. So this is the main result of the scheme, the main characteristics. So 9 square kilometers, an optimal fare of $2.6. It would have produced a reduction of 20% of traffic in the congested zone and 5% in the overall city. An increase of speed from 17 kilometers per hour to 21 kilometers per hour. And in general, it was a project that was providing more resources than the operational cost. It was an expensive operational cost, 15 million US dollars per year. So this project was interrupted by the city council. And from 2016 to 2019, we tried to develop a new project. I was the Secretary of Mobility of Bogota. Uh, so I stopped to be a professor for 4 years and went to the city government. And we tried to develop this charge by kilometer. It was also um, supported by a consultancy from Steer Davis. We had a bigger zone, 45 square kilometers. We had a fare that was composed by a base and a cost by kilometer. So it was 20 cents as a base and 10 cents by kilometers. It generated a reduction of 5%, a small increase in the congestion area of 3 kilometers. And it was also interesting in terms of providing money. So the big promise to try to sell this congestion charge was really providing money to uh, improve public transport. And finally, this is something that started to work now. It's in place. So in Bogota now, you can pay a 6-month or 1-year public cost to avoid car restriction. You can pay $1,250 per year, so you don't have the restriction. We have calculated that 60,000 cars owners are willing to pay this fare, and that would produce a very interesting amount of money that would be dedicated to improve public transport. I think that congestion charge schemes in Latin American cities really make sense. Those cities have a very high density, uh, income is growing. As I will show, investment in mass transit in those uh, city capitals have been important, and we have strong congestion. So from a technical, financial, and economical perspective, congestion charge seems to be an interesting solution. I am showing here a result from a study that was funded from the Inter-American Development Bank. And so we're trying to see what could be a congestion charge in Santiago and Mexico City and Bogota. So the one from Bogota, I described it already. And you really could see that all the figures related to congestion charge could be very interesting, even though Santiago has a very good highway toll um, urban network. It is also a congested city. So we have here the area that was proposed to Mexico City, and here we have some of the results. So in general, we had a fare that could go from $2 to almost $1. Improvements, good improvements in the average speed, decrease in car use. So in general, we could say that studying and putting in place a congestion charge scheme could be interesting for our cities. So why congestion charge idea is not progressing in the Latin American region? It is due to lack of acceptability. So one of the things that we've been doing in our cities is really investing a lot of money on public transport. So as Minister was saying, Santiago has doubled its metro network and is operating a fleet of more than 200 electric buses So she was saying it's now 700 electric buses. Bogota has finally started the construction of its first metro line that will be integrated to Transmilenio BOT that has already 150 kilometers. Transmilenio has also renewed the buses fleet. So now we are having CNG Euro 6 articulated and B-articulated buses. And this year, we're starting to operate almost 500 electric buses in the system. Lima works a lot on PPP schemes for the construction of an expansion of the metro network. They operate BRT buses with CNG already or from 5 years ago. Sao Paulo is still working in very interesting PPP schemes to develop metro and subway lines, which is very innovative. Mexico City has been putting a lot of money on BOT systems and expansion, 100 kilometers of BOT network in 15 years. And Buenos Aires is also working a lot on BOT. So this is key because what we need really as cities is money to fund these big investments. But the other things that makes difficult to really develop congestion charge schemes is that motorists is the state's cash cow in Latin America. So, and even though rich people in Latin America move in cars, most of the vehicles in Latin America are from middle income owners. As low income and middle income is such a big part of the population, most of the cars in our cities come from middle income people. And the question is if we could really try to shift and give priority to more effective taxes. I think that congestion charge could be a more effective way to tax car use than other taxes that we use nowadays. Another key element to really being able to develop congestion charge schemes is regulatory and technological frameworks. So we had this wonderful presentation from the Singapore experience and how technology has been vital to make possible this congestion pricing. So we need to work on this national regulation, technological standards, and we need to give more autonomy to local authorities. As I was telling you, one of the big issues to really succeeding to have these projects going on is the political discussion. Finally, some ideas on what we should do about HOT in the future. So really what we need to focus now in Latin American cities is giving the space to the more efficient modes. So I am showing here two pictures. Picture at the bottom is Transmilenio system, the BRT. It moves more than 50,000 persons per cents per hour in the most charged part of the system. And another example is in the motorway at the north of the city. We have more than 20,000 school students that go to work. The rich kids make a very difficult trip every day. And in this avenue, we have more than 500 school buses. So what we have to do here is really giving that space to those 500 buses, and it's very difficult in our cities, specifically in Colombian cities, to give space to HOT, to HOV schemes, as we are such a dense city with not enough road space. But in Latin America, we have very interesting um, toll roads in Santiago, as I mentioned at the beginning. Road 1L, for example, the, the highway ring in Sao Paulo, the second floor highway in Mexico City, that could have a very interesting um, ideas from what it's been going on in Israel and in the United States. So thank you very much.